So this is a quick video showing you how to cut a concrete block. This is a 7.2 Newton concrete block, which is a fairly standard offering in the UK and can be used for a number of different purposes, laid vertically or on its side. So to cut it, I'm using a brick bolster, which is around 4 inches. I've got a bolster hammer, which is a £2 one, and a bricklayer's trowel, which we can use for cleaning up the cut after we've made it. So the blocks will be cut lengthways, and that's because they're going over lintels around the top of the final course of blocks on this particular project. So you put them in a heap. That gives you a nice sturdy base to cut the block on, and also a bit higher to help your back. It's important to check in between the two blocks to make sure that there are no little bits of gravel or fragments of block which can cause point loading when you're trying to cut the block with the hammer and bolster, because it will cause the block to break. So give the block underneath the block you're cutting a good scrape with a trowel to clean off any little bits left over. So first off is to measure your cut. So you want to leave about 10 millimeters for mortar, maybe a bit more, and then I normally subtract about 5 millimeters from the height you want to allow for any irregularities. So it's better to have the block a little bit smaller and make up the difference with mortar. So we use the bolster there to score a mark on the top of the block where we want to make the cut, and then we're ready to go. So we pick up our bolster hammer and we start to gently chisel a groove along the top of the block, and you can see the groove doesn't have to be overly straight, but the straighter it is, the neater really, and so do try and keep it straight, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So we just go along gently tapping each time. I'm probably taking a bit more time than I normally would here. You could go a bit faster if you want, but if you try and rush it and hit the bolster too hard, then it won't. It will probably break in an irregular fashion, and you'll end up with a very awkward, probably angled cut with lots of jagged bits, and it won't be any good. So you can see there I'm being careful not to get any of the bits on the block below, so to avoid that point loading I was talking about. Give it a clean off there with a hand or a trowel, and then you can't see it, I'm afraid, because it's off the top, but I'm just scoring the top of the block with the bolster as we did at the start, just to mark where the cut is and carry it across. You can see the very faint line on the end, and then we continue the line, our chiseled groove, on the other side all the way along. And we're still being quite gentle at this point. We just want to make a nice sort of consistent groove as straight as possible along the cut line. Now when we've made the cut line quite well, then we start to hit the block a bit harder then, in order to try and cause it to fracture. Now you can see that started to go, but rather than just hit the block where it's begun to crack, keep moving the bolster along and hit it in some other places, because if you just keep hammering in the same spot, there's a risk of that piece that you're trying to get off breaking in two, and it might be more useful to you to keep it whole, such as it is there. So after we've done that, you can see we've got some slightly high points on the block, and we'll just use the edge of the trowel, a bit like an axe, to trim those off. And it's quite important to do that, because if you have little bits poking out, then when you lay the block, they might poke down through the mortar and cause the block to sit on a strange angle, but most of those have been trimmed off now, so that's good. So now, just to show you how to cut one vertically, we'll just do one quickly here. So this is kind of a full speed one here. Make a line across one side, score across the side, and then continue a line across. And when you made the line all the way across, give it a damn good whack in the middle, and it should break cleanly like it has there. Trim it up with a trowel, and you're ready to go. So that's about it really. So excuse for the slight mismatch between the voiceover and the camera, but the original sound quality was quite bad, so I thought I'd re-record it for you guys. Okay, thanks very much. Cheerio, bye.